Everything was given, not all at once, not to impress, but in silence, in gestures, in looks, and this person didn't notice. They thought it was just another chapter, that there would be time, that what existed could be postponed. And there they stayed, even without reciprocity, even invisible, even in pieces. The giving was constant, even without recognition, even without gratitude. This person didn't see or didn't want to see. Confused care with obligation, confused presence with boredom, confused love with certainty. It was necessary to silence, to stop insisting, to stop giving to someone who doesn't know how to receive. It was necessary to leave slowly, because even the pain was no longer making noise. And only then did this person understand. Understood that what was there was rare, that what seemed guaranteed was a miracle, that the way they were looked at, touched, embraced, wasn't common. Only it was too late. There was no more smile, no more messages, no more patience. This person tried to pull from memory the calm that existed there, the warmth, the care, the listening, but found nothing left, because what was light became absence, and what was certain became never again. This person misses it, but there's nowhere left to seek, lost it while they had it, because they only realized afterward. Have you ever lived this? Have you ever been the one who loved in silence and was only recognized when they decided to stop? Tell me, what was the moment when everything that was light began to weigh heavily? You don't begin this kind of story with once upon a time, because it wasn't. It was real. It was here. It was now. And you were there, whole, silent sometimes, but always there. Present even when not invited, offering love without labels, without warnings, without contracts. This person had it all, had the privilege of waking up to your attention, had the luxury of being heard by someone who truly cared, had the comfort of being embraced by arms that weren't just fulfilling a role, but that supported, welcomed, chose to stay. But it got confused, thought it was routine, thought it was just a phase, thought love was noisy. Forgot that true love lives in the details, and the most dangerous detail is distraction, because you stayed, even being ignored, even having to repeat what you felt 10 times before being truly heard, even having to swallow your pride in the face of indifference disguised as tiredness, even having to reinvent yourself every day to keep alive what was already dying on one side. And this person didn't see, didn't notice when your gaze had already wandered further away, didn't realize when your good morning became shorter, didn't understand that your silence was already a scream, didn't realize that love was fading. You were still trying, but it was a different energy. It was more exhaustion than hope, more effort than reciprocity, more loneliness than partnership, until one day you stopped, not out of anger, not out of pride, but because it hurt too much to keep giving so much to someone who thought it was little. You no longer sent that message you used to send, no longer insisted on saying you loved them for the 1000th time, no longer forced conversations, no longer asked to be seen. And it was then, at the exact moment you stopped trying, that this person noticed the emptiness, noticed the absence, noticed how much your excess mattered, noticed that what seemed ordinary was unique, but noticed too late. And too late has a bitter taste, because there's nothing more that can be done, nothing that can put back in place that love that only existed because you insisted. This person looks at the places where you used to sit, listens to the songs you liked, sees your features in faces that aren't yours, and all of this doesn't comfort, because now you are a memory, no longer a presence, now you are silence, no longer an answer. Now you are the if I had only noticed earlier. But they didn't notice, didn't realize that the way you listened was healing, that your way of caring was exceptional, that your touch was home, that your I'm here was more genuine than any promise. This person thought they could come and go, that you would be there when they decided to wake up. But love, it gets tiring. Love that only goes away, never to return, depletes. And that's when you stopped bleeding inside and began to withdraw. You stopped giving. You stopped waiting. You stopped justifying someone else's absence with too much understanding. And this person noticed. But it no longer mattered, because you, who used to be so whole, are now at peace. Even with an emptiness in your chest, you're at peace. Even without that story resolved, you're at peace, because you understood that loving deeply is not the same as being loved, and that presence doesn't guarantee reciprocity, and that sometimes the only way out is to walk away with everything that's left of you, This person misses you, but they don't miss you right now. They miss who you were while they weren't paying attention. And that version that you are no longer, now you're different, lighter, more selective, more attentive to what deserves your yes. You don't regret loving, but you also won't go back. Because going back would be betraying yourself. It would be denying the silence you learned to honor. Comment here. She had everything, but she didn't notice. Or, I won't go back to someone who only saw me after the end. Have you lived this? Have you been the silent lover? Have you been the one who stayed until they couldn't anymore? Have you been the one who, even while falling apart, decided not to return? And if you still have the strength, tell me, what was the day you realized that loving was no longer enough? This person is still trying to understand where they got lost. They mentally return to the good days, trying to find the exact moment they stopped noticing. It wasn't a specific mistake. It was the accumulation of indifference, the sum of "I'll look later." Not now. It's just in your head. And you listened. You tried to understand, you adapted. You blamed yourself, you thought you were exaggerating. But now, looking from the outside, you see it wasn't exaggeration. It was a heart trying to survive in the desert of someone who never felt thirsty. You were sending signals. It showed that something was wrong. It expressed itself through the gaze, the body, the silences. But that person interpreted it as drama, as neediness, as demands, and you began to wilt, not all at once, but little by little, like someone realizing that no matter how much they give, whoever isn't ready will never see. And now that person watches you walk away without making a scene, without revenge, without a speech. You didn't need to prove anything. Because when someone is genuine, when they leave whole. Today that person has time, has space, has awareness, but doesn't have you anymore. Because love, when it matures, doesn't scream. It simply says goodbye. And that's what this person didn't understand. That the end doesn't come with anger. It comes with peace. A bitter peace, but a necessary one. A peace that comes when you accept that hurting to fit in with someone else isn't worth it anymore. You did what you could, and now you do what you must. You leave, even though you want to stay. You step back, even while still feeling something. You choose your own skin because no one can live by abandoning themselves every day to be loved. This person feels. But feeling doesn't bring you back, because what was broken was trust, not just in being loved, but in someone knowing how to care for your soul. And that cannot be rebuilt with "I'm sorry" or with "now I understand." Not even with flowers. If you've experienced this, comment, "Love got tired before I did," or "She only understood when it was too late to fix things." You know how it is. You know what it's like to give everything to someone who doesn't know how to receive. You know how it hurts to realize that love has turned into an effort. You know how the heart completely shuts down when it's tired of being ignored. So tell me down below, what was your final point disguised as silence? But this conversation isn't over yet. Because there's something no one talks about regarding those who leave. It's not just the other person who suffers. You feel it too. You feel the echo of what you built. You feel the absence of what, no matter how much it hurt you, was still a part of you. And that pain, no one sees. Only you know what it's like to wake up in the middle of the night and remember a hug that no longer exists. Only you know what it's like to hear someone's name that can no longer be called. Only you know what it's like to leave with love and to have to rebuild yourself in silence. But that's when everything changes. Because when you stop begging for affection, you start to realize who you are. You begin to feel your own voice again. You start to hear yourself, and you realize that what hurt wasn't longing. It was dependency. It was the illusion that you needed that someone to be happy, but you don't need to. You are whole, you are rare, you are what no one can replace. And if that person couldn't see it, that says more about them than about you. You weren't too much, you were real, you weren't intense. You were consistent with what you felt. They just weren't ready. And now it's up to them. The weight of absence is theirs, the regret is theirs, the awareness is theirs. You keep going, not out of vengeance, but out of love. Self-love. When that person realized you wouldn't come back, something in them broke. It wasn't just longing, it was shame. It was regret. It was the kind of pain that comes when one realizes, too late, the value of what was neglected while it still mattered. You have always been perceptible, even when they tried to diminish you, even when they pretended not to notice. It was in your way of listening with your eyes, of caring without making a fuss, of waiting without demanding, of loving with presence. This person had access to what the whole world seeks and wasted it. Maybe out of ego, maybe out of immaturity, maybe out of fear of surrendering. But now that doesn't matter anymore, because realizing it later is the most precise punishment. There's nothing harder than seeing clearly everything that slipped away kusas through your own hands. And you no longer fit in the same space as before. You no longer bend to fit where you weren't offered a hand. You no longer want to be a memory. You want to be a choice, an active presence, conscious love. You will no longer beg for emotional scraps. You will no longer plead to be seen. You will no longer justify absences with hopes, because now you know those who need to be convinced to love you will never deserve you. And that person realized this, but they didn't realize it enough to change in time. They didn't notice while there was still warmth in your touch, while there was still sparkle in your eyes, while there was still faith. Today what exists is an echo. It's emptiness. It's an attempt to revive what only existed because you insisted, but you learned. You learned that love begins when respect is natural. You learned that reciprocity cannot be forced. You learned that almost does not fulfill. And that loving someone who doesn't recognize your existence is the slowest way to die inside. You know this now, and even though you feel nostalgia tightening from time to time, you will not go back, because you realized your own worth. You noticed the toll of insisting where no one extends a hand. You understood that your heart is not a waiting station for anyone to mature, and this realization is what saved you. Comment here if you also understood this. I stopped insisting when I realized she only liked what I gave, not who I was. Or, she didn't see me, but I learned to see myself. Have you felt that? Have you noticed that love does not survive where presence is lacking? Have you had to withdraw so as not to disappear inside someone? Tell me below. What was the unspoken phrase you wish you had said before leaving? But hold that silence for one more second, because there's one more thing. There comes a time when the emptiness that this person feels transforms into desperation. That kind of desperation that doesn't show on the outside. It's what comes in the middle of the night. It's what lingers while they scroll through social media, trying to guess if you've forgotten them. It's what echoes when someone asks, "And that someone?" And they can only respond with silence, because they know they've lost, not by chance, but by choice. And this is what hurts the most. It wasn't the time that separated us. It was the clarity you realized, and when perception arrives, there's no going back, because the love that awakens no longer deceives, because deep down, this person still thinks, still relives, still wonders what it would have been like if they had realized sooner, but they didn't realize. And now you move on. With your heart in pieces perhaps, but with your consciousness whole. Because you chose yourself, you stopped begging for scraps. You stopped being the background in someone else's life who only saw you when you threatened to leave. You understood, with pain, but you understood, that love must be a choice, not a consequence, and this person feels it. But delayed feelings don't rebuild anything. They don't regenerate what has been spent. They don't give back the days you spent trying to convince someone that you were worth it. You don't want to be a question anymore. You don't want to be almost. You don't want to explain yourself anymore. You want someone who looks at you and says, "It's you, and I see it." And until that happens, you walk with what you have, with what's left, with what you've learned. Because in the end, that's what remains. The courage to withdraw from where there's no space to blossom. The strength to stay whole, even with the absence weighing heavily. And the certainty that those who didn't realize in time don't deserve the privilege of having you now. If this touched you, comment below. I chose myself and I won't go back. Or they only realized when it was too late. I realized in time. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this. Someone who is giving too much to those who don't know what they have in their hands. Someone who is almost losing themselves to fit into someone's life, who only shows up when it's convenient. Write in the comments what struck you the most in this message. What was the phrase that resonated with you? Subscribe to the channel, turn on the notifications, and come be a part of this journey with us. Here, what you feel is true. Here, who you are matters. And leave a like if this video resonated with you, because the next conversation will go even deeper. And I'll be waiting for you there. See you next time.